Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our award-winning series, Time Out for Opera. My name is Jonathan Swift, and for the next half hour, you will be in the opera world. Karen DiChiera, my co-host, and I will introduce you to new and wonderful singers. We will also have information about the opera community and some supporting details, maybe even surprising, that you may not know about the opera world. If you would like to know more information about Michigan Opera, however, we invite you to check out their website at www.motopera.org. Our pianist for today is Alvin Waddles. Now, Karen, who is our special guest for today?
Well, we do have a special guest, but before we go there, Jonathan, I just wanted to surprise you with an opera quiz. Okay?
Okay.
All right. What opera has somebody who sings an aria or a solo song to a coat? And what is that person's name? And we'll get the answer at the end, okay?
Wow, okay.
Okay, sings an aria to a coat, a farewell aria. And what opera, what's his name?
Okay.
Now, another
you'll
name.
give me time to think about it.
Yes.
Okay.
Now another name, Nadine Deleury. Nadine Deleury is the principal cellist of the Michigan Opera Theater Orchestra. She comes from France and studied at the Paris Conservatory. And Jonathan, you can share with us later a wonderful story about your mutual alma maters and how you got in. She also came for graduate studies at the Yale School of Music. In addition to playing with the Michigan Opera Theater Orchestra, Nadine runs the chamber music at the Scarab Club with her friend and in our second violin section, Velda Kelly. Nadine specializes in French composers of the post-Romantic period, and we're going to hear some music of that today too. So she teaches at Oakland University and privately cello. And without further ado, let's meet Nadine Deleury.
Okay, but now since this is Time Out for Opera, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have her do 3 short excerpts from 3 operas. Now the first one is rather a surprise. It's from the opera called William Tell. And usually people think about that Lone Ranger theme. This is not it. The second 2 excerpts are themes from the opera Tosca. And so here she is, ladies and gentlemen, Nadine Deleury.
Learning is for children and young adults. Learning is for moms and dads. Learning is for grandmas and grandpas. Learning is for everyone at Learning at the Opera House. Come discover what you can learn at the Detroit Opera House this summer. To order a free course catalog, please call Michigan Opera Theater at 313-237-3270.
Nadine Deleury, welcome to our program. It's such a pleasure having you. Usually we just look at you down in the pit.
And I wear black.
And you wear black, that's right. Tell me, the last excerpts that you played, the William Tell and the two Tosca. Now, what is happening on stage when this happens? I mean, I recognize the theme.
Right. Let's talk about Tosca, and that's the
Okay.
one we are rehearsing and playing at the Opera House soon. The first one that I played by myself, of course, is not by myself in real opera. It's doubled with a flute. And that's the Tosca's first appearance on stage. So that's her theme. So when it comes back, it's always her theme. The second one happens in the third act, pretty close to the beginning of the third act. Cavaradossi is waiting to be executed in an hour.
Ah, yes.
So that explains the dramatic tone of the...
Right.
And his jailer is coming to tell him that he has 1 hour. And Cavaradossi asks if he could have some paper to write a letter to Tosca, to his beloved. And he said to him, if you promise that you will deliver this letter, I will give you my ring. And he gives his ring. So the cello solo starts when he's talking to the jailer about this, and also when he starts gathering his ideas and his memories and starts writing the letter.
And that theme is picked up in his subsequent aria, right?
Right, I mean, it comes.
Right.
And it's so poignant knowing that it's just before an execution,
Yes,
that he
yes.
only
Yeah.
has an hour to live.
Right,
Yes.
and it's followed by the clarinet solo that Alvin kind of played a little bit of,
on
which
the
is
piano,
just on the
yes.
piano, which is
Yes.
just beautiful, and
Right.
our clarinetist does a beautiful
Now,
job.
how
with that.
often does this happen in operas, that the cello may have a solo line?
I would say often.
Really?
Yeah, I could not find more solos that I could play for you here because they are usually very short.
Mm-hmm.
This one is pretty long, and in fact, it's a cello quartet with a prominent cello line, the first cello,
Yes.
but it's a cello quartet.
Why do you think the composer picks the cello?
Well, they also give violin lines. The first violin often has some lines. I don't know. I mean, it's often
sort of
violin, cello,
It's like a soulful
clarinet,
instrument, though.
Okay.
Sometimes
Now,
the viola,
Interestingly enough, later you're going to talk about a composer called Nicolas Bacquet.
Mm-hmm.
He says it's because he favors the cello because he says the cello represents more than any other instrument the voice, from bass up to soprano. And so it is very close.
In
you
fact,
know.
in that solo that from the quartet, it really shows what you just described about
That's right,
the-
yes.
the range of the cello.
Right. Now, tell me what it's like. Sitting in the pit when the opera is going on. You know, very often we think that the whole opera is made up of just the soloist. But the fact of the matter is, it is not. I mean, there are the soloists, there is the set, there's the lighting, there's the costumes, and of course, there's the orchestra. And for those of you who have heard an opera played by piano, you will know the difference, how shallow it is and how profound and with such depth and drama with the orchestra. When you are sitting in the orchestra, let's say you're doing a new opera, because a lot of the operas you've done many times, but let's say you're doing a new opera, okay, like, well, the one that you did, you know, the Garner opera.
Margaret Garner.
Margaret Garner. Now, in that case, when you sat there playing it for the first time, were you concentrating so much on what the next note was that you couldn't really know what was going on?
Well, it's just like anything else. At first, you don't think of anything else, just the notes, watching the conductors, not even understanding what you are doing. But it has to be together, it has to be right. But as you play it, and we have rehearsals for that, you start making sense. And the conductor usually is there too to explain. And sometimes you also explain what's going on stage. Sometimes they do take the time to explain, which makes a big difference in So we know. I am lucky enough to be on the edge of the pit, so I have a glimpse of what's going on stage, but for some of the musicians who are under, the stage. They will not see anything, which must be frustrating and maybe more difficult to play because they don't know what they are playing for.
Hopefully they get to go to the piano dress rehearsal, so they can tell, what is going on.
Do they
They're allowed
do that?
to. Oh yes.
I have to say that we don't take advantage of that.
You're allowed to be. That's unpaid time, probably, is it? Now, tell me, and I know this is right up your alley, Karen, but the orchestra is composed of a number of different
sections.
Yeah,
percussion.
Okay, the percussion section. That's
drums and xylophones, the piano,
ding-dongs and
gongs, whistles, sometimes even anything that's unusual. And then, of course, the winds, which includes flutes and clarinets and oboe and bassoon.
Okay, they're called winds because they're instruments that are blown.
Woodwinds, that originally were wooden instruments.
Wooden instruments, okay.
And then the brass, which is trumpets and cornets and trombones and horn, French horn.
Now, would brass instruments include? I think they're called reed instruments.
No, that's the winds.
That's the winds.
Yeah, and then the strings is where Nadine sits.
Okay, the strings are composed of
2 sections of violins. They play different parts. The first violins and the second.
Okay.
The violas, the cellos.
Just viola one.
Cello, that's right. Just like the cello. I mean, there could be some different parts inside the section. But usually it's a solid section.
The cello is always one also. They don't have cello 1 and cello 2, do they?
Sometimes
composers do write.
Right, sometimes.
Now, the interesting thing is, ladies and gentlemen, that if you've ever seen a cello, you'll know that unlike so many other instruments, it's held down between the knees. Now, the original name for this was
viola da gamba.
Viola da gamba with the Italian.
And it fit inside of the legs like this.
Yes.
And not on the floor. If you notice, Nadine had a, what is that stick?
End pin.
End pin. End pin that goes onto the floor.
Because otherwise it might slide up. Then
Right.
you'd all of a sudden you'd find your cello was right in front of you, flat on the floor. So it has to be supported by something. Okay. Why is it, and just maybe my imagination, but why is it that the cello is played more often by women than men?
Is it?
Really?
I didn't know that.
Well, see what I mean? I said it was maybe my imagination. It's not, huh? I mean, I know there are people like Rostropovich and so on that are very well known, and they're all men.
Pablo Casal.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. I just don't know what to say.
You don't know what to say?
No, I never realized that.
Because your impression is that it's mainly men.
No, probably not. I would have thought maybe half and half.
Half and half.
Unlike harp players who are often women.
Women, yes.
But for cellos, I will do some research.
Don't do research. You don't have to worry about that. That's wonderful.
Well, Jonathan, you might be interested to know, too, that this wonderful orchestra, the Michigan Opera Theater Orchestra, happens to be the second largest orchestra in Michigan as far as number of times that they perform and the budget of the orchestra from within the company. And we had to get that information because of grants that we write to the National Endowment of the Arts for the Arts and Michigan Council for the Arts.
Okay. We're now going to hear, I guess, now we're getting to Nicolas Bacri, right? What are you going to play for us?
I'm going to play 3 excerpts from his suite for cello alone, number 3. He wrote 6 of them.
Okay.
In fact, his catalog is considerable. In the biography that I read, which may not be current, he wrote more than 80 works, 6 symphonies, 6 suites, concertos, lots of pieces for chamber music, cantatas. The only thing he doesn't seem to have written is an opera. I mean, I have not seen
we'll just
that.
have to wait around for that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here is Nadine Deleury on the cello, playing music by Nicolas Bacri. Nadine Deleury, those last pieces were by a French composer, is that right?
Right, Nicolas Bacri.
Nicolas Bacri. Is he the one that started composing when he was 16 and
That's right.
played piano
And
at 8
has
or something?
composed plenty since he was 16.
Oh,
He has written
Lord.
an incredible amount of music.
It's quite amazing that, and I understand that he's certainly considered one of the best contemporary
He really is.
composers. Now, Karen, will you remind me of the question, the quiz question that you gave me?
Okay. What person sings to his coat? And what opera is that from? It's from La Bohème, and the character is one of the Bohemians, Colline, who is singing goodbye to his coat because he's selling it so that he can get money to get a doctor to save Mimi, who is dying of consumption. Okay.
Wow, okay.
And
I would have
Jonathan-
gotten the opera right.
Jonathan, what is the piece that you sang to audition for your teacher in your mutual alma mater?
This is funny, Nadine, because you and I both went to the conservatory and we know what it's like.
The Paris Conservatory.
The Paris
yes.
Conservatory, yes. Well, actually, I had a whole lot of other things, but when I sang for the first time for my teacher, who was a star of the opera company, I sang Home on the Range. Every time I think about that, you know, now if Arab Barbarians sang it, it would be an art song. But I
Well,
don't-
when you sang it, it was too,
well,
I'm sure.
thank you very much. I'm not sure that it was. But ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of one program, and Nadine Deleury from the Michigan Opera Orchestra, I thank you very much for being with
for
us.
having me.
And I want to thank Alvin Waddles also, who was your accompanist, and Karen, of course, my co-host. It's always a delight. Ladies and gentlemen, join us again for another program in Time Out for Opera, and remember, think opera. Ciao.